Okay, so this is episode 6 now, right? So what's going to be covered in this episode is making the front bash bar. Now, there's a lot of other stuff that already went on, like the front bumper and the fenders and the hood and everything like that. But the bash bar is the only thing that's like 100% like done right this second, and so that's why I'm going to be showing this right now because it's actually complete. So just a heads up, know that the other stuff is there, and I didn't show it yet, but it'll all get shown when the time comes. Alright, so anyways, the purpose of the bash bar is to hold up the front bumper and to support the weight on it, and so that way the front bumper doesn't sag and it actually has something to sit on. But the stock front bumper support is a little bit messed up on my car, and it's often a thing that drifters change on their cars because you can fit the intercooler in there better. On top of that, based on how you design it, you could also build in a jacking point into it, which is very useful, or you could have a double bar bash bar, which protects a lot better than the stock bumper support does. Now the bash bar I'm going to be making in this episode is one of about 3 different bash bar designs I want to have. So again, it's not going to be like the only one on there. It does have some pros, it does have some cons, and so those are all taken into consideration, and that's why I'm going to be having different bash bars. So the design concept for this bash bar is to hold up the front bumper, of course, have a jacking point at the front of the car that I can reach without taking the bumper off. Number 3, be weak enough just like all bash bars should be. And number 4, still allow the car to drive onto a trailer without me having to take the bash bar off. So I'm going to make the template again just for the bash bar. So because this mounting point is messed up on the other side, the stud is broken off, and on top of that this whole area is mangled, I can't use the OEM location that you would normally put a bash bar at. So instead I'm going to cap off the frame right here and then put 2 nuts in here welded. And then same thing kind of like with the tube front, so it just unbolts. There you go, just rubbing my, what I didn't think was dirty finger on it, and you get the outline exactly where you need it. So now it's a matter of trimming the paper template to size, then transferring over to a piece of metal, and then cutting it out of the piece of metal. As you can see with the template, there's some back and forth play because the box of frame right here isn't exactly flush with one another. So I'm going to take an angle grinder and shave down portions of it in order to get it to sit completely flat. Okay, so I got this to sit pretty flat over here, get decent fitment. Now with everything fitting nicely, I can make duplicates of this. Now using an angle grinder with a cutoff disc as well as a flap disc, I trim them all to be the same size. Okay, here's all 5 of them, 4 needed, 1 extra. Now I'm going to drill the holes. So to mark out the holes, I already have my combination square set to the proper length. That is halfway the distance in between this plate, and so I'm just going to mark the center line. Then kind of just measured out where I think I would like it, and make sure I have enough space to weld the nut on the back and still clear the frame. 5 32 inch bit right now. Now let's go to the next size. Holes drilled, I prepped everything to be welded. also a little bit of indentation over here from when the car was in an accident. So I'm just gonna hit that out with a punch. This is either genius or really, really dumb. I couldn't get this dent fully out just because when I would hit it, it would just, the whole piece would just flex out. So anyways, it's good enough though. And of course, just the usual stuff, take it down to bare metal, prep with acetone. Then I painted the back sides of the plates that are getting welded onto the frame rail, and that's just to try and prevent rust. Metal is prepped, time to weld. This thing is getting ridiculously hot, and I have to keep waiting for it to cool, so I'm gonna do what's recommended apparently, which is bolt some metal up to it so that way it absorbs some of the heat. That way I can do my welds faster. We go downhill. So a tip that some people gave me when I was welding last time was to go downhill, and that is working fabulous. That was an accident. Sexy. So with this welded on, I can move on to bending the tubing for the bash bar. I've already marked out the center of the tubing, which is going to be 3.5 feet, since the entire tube foot is 7 feet. I've also measured the distance from the center of one plate to the center of the other, and that's 29 3/4 inch. And so I've gone ahead and marked that 29 3/4 inch, and then of course divided by 2, I can just measure out from the center to get that. So I know my tubing is going to have some sort of support over here as well as over here, and so I want to make sure to make all my bends outside of this, so that way I can avoid having to have my mounting point right at the location of a bend. So I already have pre-bent tubing where I know it's supposed to be starting out on the tubing bender. So this one is a 45-degree angle, this one's a 30-degree angle, so I can kind of toss them in here. That way I can mark where to start my bends at. I also took my tape measure and marked out where the tubes are going to be that attach to the plate. So I can have that as a reference on where to avoid my bends in here and where it's going to be sitting at. And so now it's just a matter of kind of figuring out what type of bends you want to do and everything like that. So just to make it easier for you guys, I'm going to do all my bending and everything like that, and then I'll come back and explain what I did after I already did everything. So the first bend I'm starting is at 3 inches from the mounting point, just 17 7/8 inch from the center. And I'm going to start this, hopefully go to roughly 60 degrees. I'll probably go to 55 at first. Okay, bench is broken. So pretty much the table is cracking right here, and it's pulling up over here, and I put a 2x4 underneath to brace it so it's not completely splitting apart, but the area where this threads into the whole entire wood, that's all pulling up. Alright, so I'm starting over again. 50 degrees, 3 inches from this mark. And of course, when doing the second bend, took my degree finder, found out how many degrees it was off over here on the die, then put a level in between this bend and that bend, and then checked over here to see what degree it would be at, and then matched them both up. So in that way, I know that they're both at the same degree, and one's not going to be shooting up while the other one's just coming straight out like a curve. started over here. Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh my god. So because I made a mistake last time, I put the wrong size pin in here, and it kept pushing the dial gauge as I was going. So I was like, it keeps reading 48 degrees, and I kept trying to bend it out more, and then finally I realized something's fishy. Ended up I bent it to 61 degrees without even noticing. So now I gotta bend this one to 61 degrees, even though I wanted to test fit at 50 degrees, and I did not want to get 60. Okay, so these are both bent now to like 61 degrees. As you can see, this is where it's supposed to fit up over here, but it's getting caught up on the sides. So what I'm going to do is put in another bend right around this area, so that way this can drop down, and then these corners too will come up and they'll match the angle of the side, so it'll be good. Is that amazing? So 15 degrees, and it is 10 and 7/8 inch away from the center. Just a bit more. Look at this measuring technique, Brett. Brett. Well. Okay, so here's the fitment on the bash bar so far. There are 4 bends in it. That's a 15, and those are a 61. Should have been 60s, but I overbent one to 61, so I did the other one to 61 as well. Now, there is some gap over here, which is good because we kind of pull in the bumper when fitting it at the top, so that's going to leave clearance for that. I already checked the headlights and put them in over here, and there's also about a ½ inch or inch clearance from the side of the headlight to the bash bar as well, so that's good. So yeah, we good. The bash bar has been taped up. When it was on the floor, there's pieces of wood stacked in the center as well to hold the center portion up. Now I'm just going to fit the bumper to the fender and get everything like that to line up. And once that's all lined up, the bash bar is essentially sitting where it's supposed to be sitting. I can take measurements for the support tubes, get those cut, and then weld those in place. First thing I'm going to do is notch the tubing. Notching the tubing, this isn't, filed down yet to make it look nice. Basically, this is what it does. It fish mounts it, and so in that way, it can fit over the other piece really nice. Now the rule of thumb is that usually you want it to go halfway the diameter of your tubing. So for this one, we're doing 1.5 inch tubing. So we would need at least 3/4 of an inch inside to the end of the hole saw in order for it to be complete. Anyway, so this is more than that just because it's easier to measure, and that way you know for sure it's good. And now we're just going to start drilling. Okay, so I got the tube to sit more or less where I wanted it to, but there's not enough clearance to take out the top bolt. So we're going to go change up the design. Instead, I'm just going to have a piece of straight tube welded out to about here. And then this is going to have a notch in it, and that's going to weld to that tube, which is welded here. That way there's going to be enough clearance for both these bolts. So I'm going to cut the tube at 2 3/4 and weld it on in the center. Okay, I have this centered. So I did a little 45-degree notch over here, and I have the regular notch over here. There we go. So basically right here is where we have the fitment so far. It's still too close to the bolt, so I'm going to have to notch it again, just very little to bring it back. Okay, so now I've set it to 45 degrees again. I'm just going to take off a little bit of the lip here, see if I can shave it down to fit enough. Also, quick tip is to clean out all the tubing before you actually weld it in place, because there are metal shavings in here as well as the cutting oil. So yeah, it's pretty shoddy workmanship if you don't clean these out and just weld everything with the stuff in there. So yeah, so now the bolt has clearance and this is in the proper place, so I just got to do it on the other side. Then more weld prep as usual. Alright, so with all the cuts done, this is kind of what I'm working with right now. I have the bash bar in place. I have the bumper mounted to the fender on the side over here. I have clamps holding the end of the tubing in place to make sure it's pushing up on the bumper in the position that it should be in. Now I had marks, as you can see at the top, where the center of the base plate is supposed to be at on the bash bar. So I've lined up the center of the tubing to where that center mark should be. So that means it's centered there. Also, I've taped up the sides of the bash bar to make sure it sits up and it follows the line of the bumper. So that way it's not dipping down or shooting all the way up. It's a nice curve. Also made sure that the spacing was even. You can see the spacing. Same thing on this side. Okay, so the only thing left to do is to tack those support bars in place. There we go, just tack welded in place. Swag, it's still staying in place. Swag, bruh. Swag. Oh, there it goes. So now since I have the front bumper off, I can actually do more tack weld, make it stronger. Now there's people that are going to want to see the fitment, so this is it right here. A little bit of gap on the bottom, but overall nice. No gap in the front. This side, kind of the same story. Very, very minor gap right there. And no gap up front. Of course, I did a little test with the bash bar, and then I moved on to making the lower bar for the jacking point. I test fitted it, then trimmed it to fit, then beveled the edges, and then prepped for welding. Make sure you clean down your tube as well. Get rid of all the metal shavings. To do the support for the jacking point to make sure that the lower tube wouldn't just bend up. And I was going to do it with two diagonal 1.5 inch tubes. However, the tubing notcher was being extremely difficult to work with, and so I was just getting overall poor fitment, and so I went to another route. But I'm having a bunch of troubles with the tube notcher right now, and getting everything to cut properly at the angle that I want to just really isn't happening. So instead, what I'm going to opt for is to run a center tube right here. And so that'll be centered right at the jacking point. Then I did a little jacking test, and it seemed like the tubing on the bottom was starting to bend up with the 1.5 inch just tacked in place. So then I decided to weld in two diagonal 3/4 inch support tubes, and those don't require a tubing notcher in order to get good fitment with, so I just used an angle grinder with a cutoff disc and a flap disc in order to get good fitment, and then welded that up. Okay, so here it is jacked up. Anywho though, there you go. It's holding the weight. Heads up to everyone. I don't like the look of this bash bar though, and I am probably going to make another one later on, and I'll probably make a couple of them overall, but for right now this will do. It's a jacking point. It holds the front bumper in place. It goes out to the corners. It goes out in front of the headlights. So I'm happy with it right now, but I'll make more later on. Now with the bash bar done, it was just a matter of capping off all the tubes. So I then cut out some rough circles in metal and then rounded those out with an angle grinder in order to get them nice and circular. Then I ground down the welds on those caps to make them look a lot smoother. And lastly, I just prepped the bash bar in order to get it ready for paint. Okay, so pros and cons of this specific bash bar design. I'll go over the bad stuff first. First thing is it blocks quite a bit of airflow from the radiator. Number 2 is it doesn't have a bar to go around the lower side of the bumper. Number 3 is it's quite a bit heavy with how many support tubes are crossing the middle and going across. Now let's get to the pros. Pro number 1 is I can jack up the front end of the car without having to take the front bumper off. And that's very useful for doing general maintenance, that you can just roll a jack under there and then jack it up without having to take off the front bumper and go through the hassle of doing that. Number 2 is it has a jacking point without having to do any modification whatsoever to the bumper. Because there's some that have a center jacking point, but you're going to have to trim out your bumper in order to get it to fit, and a lot of times you'll still have to remove your front bumper in order to jack up the front end of the car. Pro number 3, it leaves quite a lot of room in the front for an intercooler. Number 4, because it doesn't have a lower bar that goes around the lower lip of the front bumper, I don't have to worry about scraping my bash bar when getting onto trailers and getting off of trailers. Number 5, I think, is it's fairly weak. It only has this one point over here, and as you can tell with how much angle this front bash bar has, any real impact coming forward should just snap off these tubes and it'll just cave in like so. There's no support from the corner of the bash bar down to the frame rail whatsoever. And in general, it seems like the type of design that would actually go ahead and just bend back in type of accident, and that's what I'm looking for because I'd rather mess up the bash bar rather than mess up the frame. And I have seen quite a few cars that actually do mess up their frames because they build their bash bars too strong. And so again, I'm building the bash bar to take the impact rather than the frame taking the impact. Benefit number 6, of course, is it supports the front bumper, and so you can put your weight on it. So overall, for having the jacking point at the front of the car, for being weak, and for still holding up the front bumper, and for providing intercooler clearance, I'm happy with how this front bash bar turned out. And even though I did say that it blocks quite a bit of airflow coming in from the front, you still have to realize that there's all this open space, and with electric fans, it should still pull in plenty of air. Overall, I'm happy with it. However, I still want to continue experimenting with different bash bar designs to suit different purposes. So that's it as far as the bash bar goes. And yeah, making a bash bar is actually surprisingly fun because you can just work with it and do whatever you want. And of course you can have different setups so it protects the lower lip. You can have it sort of super strong, super weak, everything in between. That wraps this up. I hope you enjoyed it and at least got something out of it and learned something from it. And you can go out there and try your own projects, doing your own little bash bars and stuff like that. And of course the build is usually further ahead than what you see on the video, so if you want to get sneak peeks of everything, you can follow me on Instagram, on Facebook, or Snapchat. I do daily updates of the build, whether it's editing or the actual build itself. And of course if you found this video helpful or you liked it, you can go ahead and give it a like. Leave a comment if you have any questions. I usually respond to each and every single question that's being asked. And of course subscribe if you want to stay tuned for more stuff that's going to be coming out. Alright, that's about it. And of course, my shirt again is from What Monsters Do. People always ask about it, so whatmonstersdo.com, coupon code THEDRIFT, 15% off. You guys already know it. Alright guys, so thank you. I'll see you next time. I'm not sure what I'm going to be doing, but of course you'll eventually start seeing more and more of the body kit that's going on the car. Bye. So mean, dog. Dog, that is so mean, dog. Dog. That is so sexy. Oh my god, that's so sexy.